Welcome to episode 368 of Chew on This, a Nerds United podcast. I'm BJ.
Vic. All right. Well, I know that we've been told not to, or at least BJ has told me not to say that at this point of our 6-year show, that we shouldn't be saying that we constantly fail upwards in getting interviews.
Awesome guests.
But I still feel like we fail upwards. And I think a lot of that has to do with the type of people that we get on our show who are always really nice. And it also helps that they never listen to our podcast too. So
we don't actually have a podcast.
I don't think anybody has ever come on the show that's listened to the podcast. So
that's okay. Except for your own interviews. The interviews are good. Interviews are good.
But nobody's ever actually listened to our past episodes and be like, yeah, those are guys I want to talk to.
I don't know. I doubt that. I think if they did, I think they would definitely want to talk to us.
Right. But today we have a really special guest. And again, anytime we get a guest, I really can't believe the guest actually decides to say yes to come onto the show. And this guest,
free time.
This guest is one of the most badass characters in one of the most amazing shows that are on TV, bar none. And I'm so glad it's back. We have Perry Young, Father June himself from Warrior. Welcome to the show, Perry. Thank you again for coming on and agreeing to talk with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Man, I mean, we usually want to start with talking a little bit about your background and how you came about with acting and so why don't you tell our audience how you came about with acting and your upbringing and stuff like that. I know in researching and Facebook stalking you or internet stalking you, we knew you grew up in Oakland, but from there, tell me how you got the acting bug from that.
Wow. I mean, how long is this podcast?
Oh, we have as long as you like.
As much as you want.
As much as you want.
Well, growing up in Oakland and getting to where I am now took like 40 years. So I could only say that when you mentioned Warrior, as a preface to what I'm doing here, it's like Warrior is a dream job for someone like me who's Chinese American, who's born and raised in Oakland's Chinatown. Well, we heard that Bruce Lee walked the same streets that we walked before he became famous. I mean, it's a dream come true. I just can't believe it. I pinched myself when I was on a set of Warrior, and I went, I can't mess this up, right? And then I see Shannon Lee walking around. I'm like, I really can't mess this up, So, but I grew up, as a first and fifth generation, Chinese American. And I always have to explain that because if you know anything about Chinese history in America, we've had the Anti-Chinese Exclusion Act. So there was a law that prevented Chinese from immigrating in the country since 1882, right? And that law wasn't lifted until 1940. And then it really wasn't lifted with the quotas until 1963 when my family immigrated. But my great-great-grandfather came before that. My great-grandfather came before that, but because of the history and the laws, they could never settle as Americans. So they always had to go back, have a family, bring their kids over. And that's my story. So we were never born on the soil until I arrived, in 1960. And, and because of that stuff, I never met my grandmothers, because women weren't allowed to enter either. So there's a history of Chinese America that's, based on, exclusion. And when I saw Bruce Lee, I mean, what he represented on screen was fighting the oppressor. All of his roles were about serving his community, serving his fellow workers. So, from the first film, The Big Boss, he went to Thailand to help his workers, fight the drug dealers, the heroin dealers. And then to Chinese Connection when he had to, go to the karate dojo, right, to free his Chinese friends from the Japanese oppressors. Yeah. And then in Return of the Dragon, when he had to help his family's Chinese restaurant from the mafia, right, in Italy. So all of it was about helping his community fight the oppressor. And I started to look around, and it was like, man, we're in Chinatown for a reason. There's If you look at the first pandemic in San Francisco, they put barbed wires around Chinatown, blaming the Chinese for a pandemic, which is what they did,
Crazy.
our former president did to us now. But so just it took a long road of getting into the arts to figure out how I want to express myself as a Chinese American. We have great Chinese American writers, Maxine Hong Kingston, Frank Chin. I mean, the list goes on. Asian Americans have made a mark. Chinese Americans have made a mark in the literature world. Amy Tan, right? So I wasn't a writer, I was a musician, a punk rocker, an artist, and I was like, how am I going to do it, And I looked at all my punk rocker friends and bands, and they were all like these middle class white kids revolting against their, upper middle class values and money, and I wasn't one of those kids, And eventually I got into it, was like, it's not my voice either. And then I went into the arts and realized, it's another system of hegemony, of patriarchy, of supremacy. It's like, how do you fit into that world unless you play the game? And I just didn't have the looks and the skin color to succeed in that world in the same way. Just like women, when I walked into my first art history class for women, and it was all about how can women get into this game, that's because they can never be masters, right? You can never be a master artist if you're a woman. And if you come down to that Eurocentric system. So I somehow ended up doing like the wildest, crazy performance art in school because it was freedom. Performance art allowed freedom.
Stand out.
Exactly. I could do what I want. I didn't have to fit into anything. And it was really like a punk rock energy of like, F you to the system, right? We could do whatever we want. You set up the system, but we're going to tear it apart.
Yeah.
So, and then it was at that same time I was at San Francisco State University discovering my ethnic identity by taking Asian American history classes. And that's where you really learn about oppression in America. You learn about the laws, that oppress people of color and women in our culture, and it's still in the laws, right? And so, learning all of that, coming of age, and being a performance artist, I was like, man, I got to get somewhere where I could really express myself. And New York City at the time was the place, right? So I graduated from San Francisco State University with an art degree, right? Because I just wanted to finish the art degree, but I really was by that time like a performance artist, dancer, musician. And I landed in downtown Manhattan, and it was just amazing. I just felt like this tiny little fish in a huge ocean, right? And there was all this stuff to do, all this crazy stuff to do. Eric Bogosian, like the Velvet Underground scene, Andy Warhol, all of that was there, right? All the possibilities. And I landed at La Mama Theater, which is the experimental emporium of the world, right? That was the place that put experimental theater on the map. The late great Ellen Stewart, Black woman, who should get accolades and credits, but she's just, she's the Black woman, right? So she's not going to get it.
Yeah.
But so many amazing things happened at La Mama Theater. I became a repertory group member, the Great Jones Repertory Group. Company. I performed in many theater productions over the last 30 years with La Mama, touring the world, really avant-garde stuff, it's just crazy stuff you'd never see on the normal off-Broadway, Broadway theater or on film. And so I kind of cut my teeth on that kind of performance, right? And then I had kids, and I had to drop out because that stuff didn't pay.
Right.
Yeah. And then luckily, during one of those shows, I discovered the shakuhachi bamboo flute. And that really derailed me from performance because it took over my life,
Composing. You did some composing.
Yeah. And I made the instruments. I ended up going to Japan and studying with the master, Kinya Sogawa, who taught me how to make and play. And at that time, I had my first kid, and it was like I was like, man, I got to make a living now. I'm going to support this child, and had to figure all that out. So I dropped out of acting for 10 years until those kids were old enough and had another one. And when they got old enough, about 10 years old, they were like sort of on their own, being able to read a book and stuff. And like, I thought,
You're like, bye.
Yeah, I'm like, I have time.
I'm going back to acting.
Exactly. So I went, I can sort of get out of the apartment now. I can sort of leave the workshop, get back into society and exercise. I had the bug, right? I just had to get back on stage. But stage did not pay. I couldn't support a family on stage, but I have to, give my partner, Maura Donahue, a lot of props because she got a job teaching so that we can have insurance. Yeah. But I focused on film and TV because I thought, if I'm going to go back to acting and be away from the family and lose income, I'm gonna have to do a kind of art that did bring in income, and that would
Right.
be in film and
Right.
TV. And I just started, seeing how I could do that, picking up the, pieces from where I left off, and it was a whole new world. I had to figure out how to get into film. And by that time, a lot has changed. Actually, when I was doing theater, in the '90s, there was nothing for an Asian American, Chinese American male man
Yeah.
to do on TV other than to play the
Like
waiter.
stereotypical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very stereotypical stuff, and from very lopsided. And that during the time that I had the kids and I was watching TV, Lost came about with Daniel Day Kim. So that was the first time we saw an Asian male on primetime
That was huge.
TV.
That
It
was
was
huge.
huge, right? And then the Better Luck Tomorrow came out with Justin Lin.
Hmm.
And I was like, when I saw that, and my kids were maybe 5 or 6 at the time, I went, man, I got to get back. If I go back to acting, there's a chance now for TV and film.
Hmm.
And so when I did, and I started auditioning, lo and behold, the whole culture of film and TV in America had changed because of streaming, Netflix, cable TV. There were more roles, more real content for Asian Americans, and especially men. I mean, women had more roles because they were, Asian women, a commodity in some ways, but not Asian men.
Hmm.
And so I was lucky that I saw an ad for Steven Soderbergh's The Knick to audition, and I auditioned for that, and I got the part, and that just blew open the doors for me.
That's awesome.
I tried to make it a nutshell, but
No, that's
No,
great.
that's great.
That's
No.
such a wonderful story. I mean, you're right. I mean, I'm obviously I'm white, but I mean, I've been watching movies for years, and I can tell that the culture's it's starting to change, but it just feels like it didn't change like super fast, because I remember watching the Joy Luck Club back in the early 90s and was just blown away. I'm like, because I'd never seen that culture in that way. They were always stereotypical, like you said. And then there was nothing for years. I'd see little bit of things,
the next thing that happened big from Hollywood was Crazy Rich Asians.
Rich Asians, right? Which I
It
watched
took
that,
over
and
20
yeah,
it took
and
that long, right?
I did
Yeah.
enjoy that a lot.
In between there was the animated Mulan. In between.
Yeah.
There you go, right? But then since then we've had Shang-Chi, The Farewell, a bunch of other great films that are
Yeah,
coming out.
good stuff.
Yeah, what was the one with Stephen Ewan in Arkansas?
Oh, Minari.
Minari, yeah. I mean,
Wonderful
so
film. Yeah, we watched that last year. It was so good.
It's happening. The community is demanding it.
So listening to your story, again, internet stalking you, I think we're the same age.
No way. You look way younger.
No.
We are literally, you were born in 78, right?
He's kissing your butt now, man.
Are you born in 70? No, are you born in the same? So the internet, are you telling me the internet? Are you telling me the internet lied to me?
No, you're bad at math.
No, I'm telling you right now, right here. It says Perry Young, 78. Date of birth 78.
No, I don't think that's
flattered,
true.
But no,
that is the first time the internet has ever lied to me about
you know what?
An interview.
I bet you Perry edited that on Wikipedia.
No. I'm the same age as Brandon Lee.
Oh, okay.
So,
I
believe Brandon,
one, right?
Yeah, doing the math.
Yeah.
Man, I remember when I'll never forget. I don't remember Princess Diana when she died. I don't remember any famous real things people growing up when they died, but I remember specifically, not to get all morbid, but I remember Brandon Lee's death. I was on my way to Little League practice.
Wow.
And I was listening to a local radio station, and it was just like a 92.7 WOBM. How is that for a callback?
See, right? Yeah, things like that stick with you.
And I remember, because I was so excited. I read, back then there's no internet, and I was in New Jersey at the time. I lived in New Jersey at the time. So like not a lot of media type of, not even websites out at that point in time. And I remember reading, I think it was like Cinescape or something, or one of those magazines.
Entertainment Weekly.
Yeah, one of those that he was making The Crow. And then on WOBM, I'm driving to practice with my mom, and it said Brandon Lee had died. And I'm like, holy fuck.
Yeah, like what?
I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, no freaking way. And like, growing up Chinese American, you know the dad's backstory about like,
Mhm.
even though the movie was completely wrong about the whole curse thing, like they played that up so much, but like you knew about like what his Chinese name meant, right? And then all of a sudden it transfers over to his son, and I'm like, oh my god, that's insane. But I just remember that. But I listened to, like, I've had a few we've had a few Asian Americans come on the show, or Asians I should say, and I gotta say, like, my story is so different than anybody else's because as far as the people I've talked to interviewing, my story was like my parents immigrated in the 70s, in the 70s or 60s, 70s, and I'm first generation, and my dad tried to integrate us. Like, we were on that side of the immigration where he tried to like immigrate us. We we lived in the ghetto for a little bit when we first moved, when we first were young, and then he moved us to the suburbs. And I thought we moved up in the world, and it never occurred to me that I was like surrounded by white people. Like, there was no culture of Chinese Americans. Like, everybody in the neighborhood knew us because every single Chinese New Year, my mom would make Chinese New Year for all of my white people friends. Like to this day, I have my childhood best friend's sister asking me for my mom's egg roll recipes to this day. But I didn't have that influence. Like, and sad to say, like, I was ashamed growing up being Chinese because like I was made fun of. I didn't have a gang of Chinese people, of friends.
Role
All
models
my
or
friends were
yeah.
white. I didn't have my first Asian friend until I was 21
Wow.
in college at Rutgers. That was the first time I had a Chinese friend. And
There's a
I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's a funny thing about that. Your experience means that sometimes when you then see another Asian, you kind of don't want to associate with them, right?
Well, it's
Uh,
because of the way that I was, influenced by white
right.
people, unfortunately. Like, and I look back on it now, like I wish I had that influence because, like for example, my first stint of racism was in kindergarten. I don't remember
Wow.
graduating kindergarten. I don't remember my first day of first grade. I remember my first day of kindergarten because I was that kid crying. But I remember my first stint of racism was I was 5, and I didn't know it at the time. And then I ended up having my first best friend was black. We were the only 2 non-white kids in the school, or I'm sorry, in the
Wow.
class. And we became best friends because we were the only 2
Wow.
non-white kids. And I remember bringing fried rice my first day of school. And I'm eating, and everybody's eating like ham and cheese and peanut butter and jelly. And
Spam.
I'm eating like fucking fried rice, like good homemade fried rice. And I'm scarfing this shit down, and white people are just looking at me all weird, white kids. And looking back on it now, I'm like, fried rice is 1,000 times better than ham and cheese and peanut butter and jelly. Screw you. Right. But at that point in time, it made me ashamed of my culture. So like, as I've grown up, talking to people like you and other Asians that we've had on the show, it's so cool to listen to their stories because like the problem with being like me, a Juxing, that like I'm kind of a foreigner in both worlds because I did go visit Hong Kong. And then I found out that like I kind of don't belong there too because I only understand Chinese. I'm not that great speaking it. Like I'm great ordering dim sum, but as far as like having a Chinese conversation, it'll sound like I'm 4 years old.
Forget about it.
Right. So like I'm kind of a foreigner in both cultures. I don't really
So
fit
many
in.
of us are.
Yeah. But you
Yeah.
had but like, again, from doing research on you, you had those friends in Chinatown. I didn't have that.
Well, so something that the internet doesn't know is that my family bought a Chinese restaurant in Texarkana, Texas.
Oh shit.
And so we relocated to Texas when I was 13 for 3 years, running the quintessential archetypal Chinese restaurant in the middle of nowhere, right? So I was at that time when I walked into the Pine Street Junior High in Texarkana, Texas, I was the only Chinese. We were the only Chinese family in the whole town. So I had that experience of being like the alien that landed
Right.
in the school.
Right.
And I wouldn't say they were racist. They were just really
Confused.
confused and surprised and
Yeah.
not understand understanding why I was there. And
Mm.
especially when I opened my mouth, I mean, my English was better than their English, right? And so
Right.
they just couldn't
Didn't
believe it, you know?
expect it.
Right. So that further actually divided us because they were confused. Like, why is this person with an alien face speaking English better than me? And
Yeah.
he's better at math in school and everything, you know? And it's not that I was good at math. It was just that that level of education in Texas at the time was a lower
A lot lower.
standard than in America, right? So when I had to read a passage in my English class, I realized that a lot of people couldn't read in my eighth grade class,
Wow.
and I was
Wow.
like, "Oh my god, they can't even read." So
You got to
I'm
dumb it
like,
down. Dumb it down, Perry. Dumb it
I mean,
down.
that further alienated
You're
me
right.
from being their friend. So yeah, I had that experience, and I could say that I was able to see the difference between being in a multicultural society like Oakland, where I had Black and Mexican friends, also to no one. You know, when I walked into the cafeteria that first day in school, that cafeteria was split in half with Blacks on one side and whites on the other.
Wow.
Down in the middle, way down at the end, was this little table with a few Mexicans, you know, and I went to sit with the Mexicans because it was like, it was, and they were like, "Hey, over here," and like it was so bizarre. I had never in my life been in that situation where segregation was just like
That's insane.
splashed on me, like a bucket of cold water. I was like,
Right.
it was sobering. So I had that experience too, and I see that like you, when I go to Hong Kong, I don't really fit in there. I mean, the several times I've been there, because you realize how Eurocentric your thinking is when you're in Asia, right? But when you're in America, you see that your skin is just so apparent that you don't belong. You're not white
Yeah.
American or Black American or brown, so you're the perpetual foreigner, right? They call us, right, a perpetual
Right.
foreigner. So
Right.
yeah, and I could say that is the reason why I am an artist today.
So Perry, I mean, this was all one big roundabout ruse for you to be Vic's best friend. So that's how we just. So
All
Well, it's
right.
I mean, it's like I said, it's interesting because even when you went to Texas, you were probably still proud of your heritage, right? Like growing up, I didn't really kind of have that. I didn't have like that type of influence. Like my parents did everything to fit in, and
Mhm.
I was always, unfortunately, it was like, you grow up in teenage years, you're already ashamed of your parents when you're a teenager, right? Add being Chinese on top of that. And then like I realized as at an older age, like probably in my 30s, that like, wow, I experienced a lot of fucked up stuff. And I don't know how to deal with it other than talking to other Asian Americans that have had that influence.
mm,
Like, and I've just started to, in the last 7 or 8 years, just realize like that I should have never felt that way. And I should have been more like, and especially having kids too. Like my kids ask me about Chinese New Year and stuff all the time. And I'm literally explaining this stuff to them like I'm a white person. Like
you're
sadly,
white splaining. Yeah.
sadly, that's, and I feel so inadequate when it comes to my own culture because and it's kind of like that. I'm sure you've seen it before where immigrants come in and they want their kids to fit in so badly that they lose their culture.
Mm,
And that is certainly true with immigrants who land in a place that's mostly not of their culture, like your experience.
Yeah.
And so when I did land in Texas, I did experience culture shock and started to develop internalized racism, which I didn't know was happening, right? Because I'm only a 13-year-old kid and my parents are immigrants. Who's going to explain that to you?
Right.
Their job is to get the restaurant running, work 18 hours a day, and
mhm.
like, try to pay the rent on this new life, and they barely speak English, right? So they're not going to know what you're going through, and their experience of coming to America is like, we came from another country. You're just moving to another state. It's not a big deal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Right. Right.
it's actually quite huge. So by the second or third year in Texas, I was like, oh yeah, no, I don't speak Chinese. No, I don't eat Chinese food. No, I don't like rice.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
it was hard to get away with that lie. And my family owned the only Chinese restaurant in Texas. But but
You had to
but
make sure you had a McDonald's bag at the table.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was, but it wasn't like my friends were racist. You just felt like you wanted to connect with them and conform to
Right.
them, and say, I'm
Yeah.
like you, I'm like you guys. Let's go get that giant burger for 99 cents, with that comes with a side of fried chicken wings. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's do that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so like
Even though the Chinese chicken wings probably were way better, right?
The whole time he's like
Yeah.
crying while
This
he's eating.
sucks.
This sucks.
yeah,
I
man.
hate this McNugget.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, our culture is not set up to have the kind of counseling and therapy that in school that supports kids, right?
This is
Kids need
also a
that.
ruse this is also a
Right.
ruse for my therapy too.
It's cheap therapy.
But
Yeah.
I had a podcast with the Fan Brothers a couple of years ago, and they said something about being black also in an area that was mostly non-black. So when you see another black person in the room, you like want to leave and don't want to associate with them
Mm,
because then it makes you more black.
Yeah.
right, right. That makes
Um,
sense.
you
As
know,
ludicrous as that sounds, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
and
I played sports growing up, like
mm,
so football, and so on the football field that was the most integrated that I felt growing up until I went
mm,
off to college. All the way up to high school is the only way that was integrated. But even then, it was mostly white and black. I
right.
guarantee you, I was the only Chinese quarterback in the state of New Jersey, right? And maybe there was one or two Mexicans across the field from us. That's it. So my friends growing up were all white and black, and I had my culture was sports. So like I played
Mm.
Madden, and then it wasn't until I went to college where these Asian guys were doing all this studying, not drinking, and playing PC games, right? And I'm sitting there like, no, I want to play Madden and I want to go drinking, and so like I never got along with them because they were fobs, basically.
Mm,
All of them were
mhm.
fobs. And my first Chinese friend was like me. He was first generation, I think first or second generation born in America, Chinese. And even then, like I had to kind of pull him into like sports culture and stuff like that
Mhm.
and drinking. I remember the first time I got him drunk, he threw up for like 3 hours.
Oh,
But but even then, like it was like me still not, it wasn't the same thing. And again, it wasn't until almost 10 years, like from here, 10 years ago, that I started to pay attention to how things were. I didn't even know about yellow peril. Like I didn't even know about it
mm,
growing up because we were never taught
mm.
it. And I definitely didn't take Asian studies growing up. I took more English studies because I have an English degree actually than I even took more Black history than I never took an Asian history
Well,
class.
that's because it was not available. I mean, so now there's a couple. Grace Meng in New York City, and I forgot the senator from Hawaii has written these bills to make it. We have to teach Asian American history in K to 12. In some states they already um,
Right.
are legalizing it, but I mean, I'm sure Florida is going to push back, but
Yeah.
like,
Florida and
so it was
Texas.
not available. Like I did not learn about my history until I went to San Francisco State when where they allowed an Asian American studies, and that's because in
Uh,
the 60s, SF State fought and struck for people of colors, for the department for it's called the Department of Ethnic Studies. Nobody was teaching Black history, you know, and at San Francisco State they called it La Raza for like Spanish or Latinx now history in America, or Asian American history. Nobody was teaching that in the
wow.
60s, and so they had to strike, and they faced police batons. Police were beating these students to say, we don't want to teach what you want to learn. You're just going to learn what we want to teach you. Is that crazy? So
It's
I
very
do want to get
America.
back to, I want to touch upon a term you mentioned just now, fob. I wonder how many people know what that means.
Oh,
Fob.
Fob is fresh off the boat, basically. That's
Right.
that's where
Mhm.
that's where that TV show name came from.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Eddie Huang, right? So I want to also connect with Eddie had that a scene in his first episode of Fresh Off the Boat where he was eating his lunch his
Right,
mom made
right,
him.
exactly.
And
Oh,
everybody was
that's
like,
right.
what
I
is
forgot
that?
about
That's horrible. It smells
Right,
horrible. And he was like, what? I didn't know that. I never knew that, I mean,
right.
so yes, that's the pressure of assimilating, right? These ignorant kids might not even necessarily say it in that manner. They're just going to ask, what is that? I've
Yeah.
never
Right.
seen it
Yeah.
before. And that is what causes internalized racism, and that I went through, and I had to like unlearn, right? Coming back to the Bay Area after we gave up the restaurant because my dad contracted cancer and all this, so we had to sell the restaurant, move back to California, be with family, and then suddenly I was like a nobody in California because I blended in.
Yeah.
So I had to
Yeah.
reverse culture shock. Of like,
Oh my gosh.
hello, I'm
Yeah.
here, you know, and you
Remember
know,
me?
in Texas, everywhere I went, the room would stop because they've
Yeah.
never seen a Chinese person before. I'm talking about the late 70s, you know,
Wow.
80s.
Yeah.
There are places where they've never met an Asian person. You know, they might see pictures of them, but never in person. So people, the curiosity is what, like, wow, you know, I had all this attention. I was like a rock star everywhere. But after I came back, nobody looked at me anywhere because I was like anybody else. And I was like, whoa, reverse culture shock, you know?
Right.
And luckily I had, you know, I had my guitar, you know, and saved my life, you know.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm
That's
kind of a big deal. They're
Yeah.
like,
you don't understand. I was the only Chinese person in Texas.
yeah.
I gotta listen, you gotta hear my song, right, about this, you know? Exactly.
Yeah.
So
That's another thing me and you have in common is that we're both musically inclined. I play guitar and I
mhm.
sing. So like when I saw that, you know, you also play, I think you play bass, right, too?
Yeah, I play guitar mostly, then bass in the most recent band in New York. That was my theater group also called
Yeah.
Slant. And then, you know, I was a multi-instrumentalist, but not formally trained at all, but I could use it to say what I wanted to say.
That's
Right.
cool.
Right.
Good.
So let's talk a little bit about your acting career. It seems like your career has basically taken off in the last 20 something years. It's just from the Nick, and then all of a sudden, you know, you start getting, you know, you're in Blue Bloods, you're in The Blacklist, which is one of my favorite shows,
Oh, I love that
Mm.
show.
and then you get to get shot by John Wick. Um,
Well, no, no. So, okay, so there's something about John Wick that's a little confusing. There is another doctor, and
oh,
so
okay.
there's the doctor number one, who's played by Randall Duck Kim, who's a great actor who was also this guy in The Matrix. So I
Oh,
was in John
Oh,
Wick
that's
2,
right.
that's right.
and in John Wick 2, my scene was cut from the theatrical release because the film got too long for the theater, and I was at the end of the film. So even when we had the screening for the
Oh
cast,
man.
I went, "Oh man, this film is getting long," and I'm at the end of the scene. I bet you they're going to cut me.
Right.
And when that scene came, yes, I ended up on the cutting room floor. But the director, Chad Stahelski, came up and said, "Oh, I meant to tell you before the screening, but sorry, I got so busy." But it's on the DVD or some other video downloads. So I haven't seen the scene myself, but it's out there. Yeah. So,
Oh,
but yes, you know, it was it. So just to clarify, I didn't have a film career until I was cast in The Nick, which was 2014.
14. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when my film career and TV career
Really
started.
started taking off.
Yeah.
But I mean, your characters are how do I put this? Your father June stands out so much amongst all your other roles to me, not because I love the show, but there was just something about your character that I understood his anger. Like I understood the shit he had to go through to build up uh his gang being in San Francisco during that time. Like there's just something relatable. Oh, and this is a question I really wanted to ask you, and you don't have to answer this, but I looked at the writing crew of 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 Warrior and then realized that there's not a lot of Asian people writing these stories, and yet somehow the stories work. Like, I'll give you an example. The live action Mulan doesn't work for me because of all the white people involved behind the camera.
Mhm.
Some reason it works for Warrior. Can you talk about why that is? And I understand that it comes from Bruce Lee and you know there's influence with Shannon and stuff like that. But at the end of the day,
It's
there's a
an
lot
Asian
of
story.
but there's
It's
but there's white writers there.
yeah.
Can you attest to why that works on your show and not anywhere else?
That's a really great question, Vic. So I could only say from a distance that the live action Mulan writers probably did not have the same investment in or understanding of the authenticity of the culture, but they were probably trying to fulfill the formula that was required to make the film. So, and there's, you know, formulaic writing that they have to do in all these big budget things to, because they have to go through stages of getting the script okayed, you know, and everything has to fit nicely into a nice package. Warrior didn't have those constraints, and also the showrunner Jonathan Tropper is a huge fan of Bruce Lee and is himself a martial artist.
Oh,
So he,
Banshee. He did
yes,
Banshee, right?
yes,
Oh my God, I love that show so much. Love
right,
Banshee.
right, and it came from Justin Lin. So Justin had
Mm,
comments on the script. So you had those two, and you had Shannon Lee, right? So you had Shannon Lee who would read the script and give feedback also. And I would say that they did not rely on tropes or anything. They just relied on real characters to tell
Right.
and rooted in history, right? So a lot of people have told me that they big fans of Warrior because of the historical accuracy, like
yes.
of what happened in the laws and how the the power play and political demagoguery and immigrant scapegoating and all that stuff really happened, and they talk about the
It's
Chinese Exclusion Act. They mention
right.
it 3 times in the first episode,
Yeah.
and so that's something you never hear in history, right? So Jonathan's really interested in what happened historically and who these people are before they are Chinese, right? Who are these people as human beings? And so when we're given that, we can be who we are. We're
Yeah.
not acting to something that's already prescribed as a stereotype. And also, like Vic, what you mentioned was that you sort of understood why I did what I did, right? Because Jonathan gave me those words, and I understood those words because my great great grandfather lived that. My great grandfather lived that. I studied that in college. I know all about that oppression and that racism, and how he had to strengthen the Tong in order to fight the violence of the Ducks, which he says, I
Hmm.
have the most powerful Tong in Chinatown to prevent the violence of the Ducks upon our people. And when I heard that, I went, that's the Chinese Malcolm X. He loves
Oh
his people.
yeah.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
loves his
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
He's not just a bad guy. He loves his people and he's defending his people, and he might have to do it by any means necessary,
Right.
but he's going to do it because he loves his people first of all.
Yeah.
And if you read, so I did some history research on Malcolm X, and everybody who had firsthand experience with him says, "Wow, Malcolm's a nice guy," you know. But
Peaceful.
if
Yeah. Yeah.
if you read general literature coming from the mainstream, he's not a nice guy, right? That's how he's cast when you get the sort of
The white
the
media.
the white media historically is not going to cast this black guy as a nice guy, but people who knew him said he was very mindful and nice and considerate, and so it's like that's another way. Like this guy, I had to find room in Father June, right? Because he's got compassion and sympathy and empathy for his people, and he's a fighter for his people. But he's going to be ruthless if you're going to come. Malcolm X had a thing. I love people, but if you're coming at me with a noose, I'm not going to love you.
Right.
Yeah. And also you have the father-son dynamic, which
Hmm.
is pretty awesome too. I mean that builds a lot of tension. It builds a lot of, because you have the young buck who wants to do things differently. He's like, okay, Dad, your way has worked, but we got to come into the 20th century here. Like we got to come into we got to do these things differently now. Like there's all this new stuff we got to do, and they always those dynamics are great because you're like, no, like this is my way right now. It's not your time.
No,
Right.
it was such a gift to read those father and son scenes because this is the first time in television, in American television, that we've had the Chinese father and son relationship. You know,
Mm,
I've never seen a Chinese father and son relationship on any other TV except Fresh Off the Boat, right, by
Right.
Eddie Huang, and
Right.
that's a comedy, right? That's a
comedy,
comedy.
right?
But and it's a very formulaic comedy, right? There's no sort of
They kind
realism
of
in,
they
in
also
how they
kind of
deliver.
they kind of also went away from the first or second
Mm.
season from that. Which is why I fell in love with the show in the beginning so much. If you're going to name a show Fresh Off the Boat, I'm going to see scenes which I couldn't believe, that scene with Eddie, in the cafeteria. Like that literally was me. Like that's my first day of kindergarten, was right
Yeah,
then and
and
there.
being attacked also, right?
Right.
Bullied. Yeah.
Right. So, but they kind of went away from that. But like those things, like your relationship or Father June's relationship with the son, I can relate to as well. There's things that are universal, right? Like there's universal things in Warrior. If you're non-white, you can understand motivations in Warrior. Like you honestly can, or you're sympathetic, I should say. If you're white, you can be sympathetic to it too. Those things are universal, but all the intricacies of, oh my God, when I'm drawing a blank now. When he says, oh my God, why am I drawing a blank? This is like my favorite show. When Jason, when Young Jun says, when Young Jun finds out that Assam can speak English, and he tells him to put guy, I fucking laughed my ass off because I couldn't believe I saw that on an American show.
Right.
Like basically he's like loosely translated. Well, I mean, like if you translate it word for word, it basically means something in the street, right? Or like go die in the street.
Literally, it means you fell on the ground on the street.
But translate, you can basically like you could say fuck off. You know English? Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. I laughed so hard because I could not believe they used that terminology in the show, and that's why I was so shocked when I checked the writers, and I was like, where the hell did they get this from? This is straight Chinese right here. This is like actual Chinese I used to watch on those VHS tapes that you got from like the Chinese grocery stores.
Oh yeah,
right.
Well, the great thing about Jonathan and the whole creative team at Warrior is that they allow our input. They say we all own this show.
That makes
and
sense.
we trust you. We cast you because we think you know who these people are and that you're going to elevate the show. So when they write these things and it says in Chinese, we can say, oh, I think he says this in Chinese. I think it would go like this. And it was like when the first time we see Jason Tobin, when they walk into Chinatown, and he says, and he brings Assam, a child brings Assam off the thing. And first thing Jason Tobin says is, "Do you little me?" And it's so, which is,
oh my God.
Mother, which is so common that it's a curse, but it's so common that it's normal, right?
Yeah.
You can hear everybody who speaks Cantonese is like, "Oh my God, this is so authentic," right?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it's what we would say. It's not made up. It's so authentic, right?
Yeah.
And there were so many moments like that, and we'll give feedback to the writers. If something, I've given tweaks, and I said, I think he would do this, and they were like, great, But Kenneth Lin, there was one great writer, Kenneth Lin, who wrote the entire episode 5 where they go off on a Western.
Oh God,
I love that episode.
Right,
so much.
Right. So that's Kenneth Lin's all one little contained piece. He's Chinese American, right? So he understands. I mean, the great thing about Kenneth is like for that, when I saw that episode, every single line resonated me with depth in many ways, more than the topical level, right? Like, and there was that sort of, if there was another Asian in the room, he'd leave, like the actor C.S. Lee, who plays the Chinese guy in that ran that tavern. He says everything was fine until you two showed up. Right? And it was just like, if I'm alone, I'm cool. But now that you guys are here, there's more Chinese here. I mean, but it just resonated, right? So if every single line.
Great.
When he
never thought of it that way.
The chicken when he was cooked them, the drunken chicken.
God, yeah.
Because you guys were like, no one eats this but me, that kind of stuff. I mean, everything was so on point in that. It was just incredible. The lines, all the words, the sensibility.
That episode.
That's the other food. The food too gets me. Like that's how I know it's being authentic. Like I don't see some like lo mein on the table with like fortune cookies, right? Like like when he said drunken chicken in this episode, I'm like, oh shit, I love that stuff. Like it was so good. You
paused to go get some.
Like that's. Well, I live in Sacramento now, and like we're very diverse here. So my kids get to grow up with a huge diverse classroom, like way better. I'm glad we moved out here because where I was on the East Coast, no diversity. Here there's plenty. There's plenty. So
California. California, right?
Right,
so much has
exactly.
happened for Chinese Americans in California,
Right. I mean, that's the thing Warrior stands out so much to me because of, the action is just better than even movies. Like the stunt coordinating that you guys do is unbelievable. But
big props to Brett Chan and his Hits International company. I mean, he's amazing.
We've talked so much about this show offline, but one of the biggest things is like for us, if character development isn't there, then usually it doesn't matter like how good the action is. But the action was so good, we're like, if the character development sucks, like whatever, the action is so good, I've never seen
Right.
this before. But it just so happens that the writing is so damn good that it's. I mean, I think we've watched this show. It's only 2 seasons. We've watched it 3 or 4 times all the way through.
You're
I've
not
actually
alone.
I've actually watched it 6 times.
Oh,
And
okay.
my entire
I
watching
love it.
is just to get to that Chinatown scene.
Oh,
Well,
God,
dude,
that's amazing.
the fight coordinator Brett Chan understands that the fight is only going to be as good as the drama that leads into the fight. And then the intention of the character to get through the fight is the narrative of the fight, you know, and Brett understands that, right? So these
that's
fighters
good.
have a need, right? They have a
Yeah,
need
that's
to
good.
get through the fight, and it comes from the drama, and that drama carries on into all the fights and the looks and everything they do. I mean, Brett's a genius. I mean, he's also such an incredible human being, you know. When they had the so they train. They train Hits International. Brett's team train every morning for 2 hours before the shoot, right? And so he's invited the cast, which is amazing. So I go in every day, even when I'm not shooting, to train with these guys because it's such a gift. It's like training with the Navy SEALs, you know. I mean, these guys are like the best. I mean, the top of the line. I mean, cream of the crop, martial artists, stunt people in the world, right? For film and TV, and I get to train with them, so I'm going, you know.
Oh,
Right,
heck
And
yeah, man.
and they take care of me, you know. Brett's like, you know, the first day I'm like, Brett, I got a bad back, you know, like I'm just gonna take my time. And he got one of his team on me, and you know, adjust all the training with me, and like my back has never been better in the last, you know, 20 years after I trained with these
Wow.
guys, you know,
Wow.
because they just know the body, the physicality, and he takes care of you, you know. It's just amazing. I love Brett, and I just can't wait to join them again.
I don't think I've ever been as happy about a show or a movie coming back than I have with Warrior. I
Wow.
and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I'm like, I seriously love this show. Like, and I loved it in the first 5 minutes
Oh,
when that
yeah.
white
Right when he
dude
gets off the
starts making
Oh,
fun of Assam and Assam
oh,
beats the shit out of him. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it because growing up as a Chinese American, that's what I wanted to do to every single person who's ever said any racist crap to me. And that's why I love the Chinatown scene so much, because the community comes together. The two
Yeah.
tongs, all the tongs come together and be like, all right, we'll kill each other, but we're not going to let you white people kill us. And I
Yeah.
loved the Chinatown. The Chinatown scene is almost like Avengers Assemble and Endgame, because when those guys come down
Oh,
the
it's so
street,
cool. So damn
and then
cool.
you have a great moment in that entire fight coming out of nowhere to save young June,
Yeah.
which was awesome.
that scene when I read it, you know, because we get the scenes only like 2 weeks before we shoot or something, you know, because they're still writing as we're shooting.
Right.
And when I read it, I went, oh my God, I'm gonna be on that set every day watching them film, because it's like historical for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because you know, we never in our in the media for American history, or even in the educational systems, learn about the lynchings and the razings of Chinatowns across America. I mean,
Right.
we've only recently been aware of Tulsa, right, for the African American community. They've burned down so many Chinatowns. You know, there were
Yeah.
Chinatowns all across,
Crazy.
up and down California and into the Midwest and Montana, Nevada. So many Chinatowns, they were all burnt down and
That's
razed, and
crazy.
people were lynched, right? And so that history is not told. But when I saw it written, I went, oh my God, we're going there. Finally, you know, finally, this is our moment. It's really centering us. This is why the show is so important. And this is why you guys have seen it for 5 or 6 times, you know? And when I was recently out in California, and I just happened to have a trip that coincided with the anniversary of the death of Visa Ratanampaki, you know, the Thai grandfather that was, I probably mangled his name. I apologize. That was pushed to his death, right? So that galvanized the Asian American community. Someone came up to me and started and recognized me and said, "Oh my God, you're not Father June, are you?" No, no, it can't be. Oh my God, it is you. She started tearing up, and she says, "I've watched Warrior numerous times over COVID and anti-Asian violence to get me through it."
Yeah.
You know,
Wow. Wow.
and she wasn't the only one. Then she brought all these other people, and I was like, "Oh my God, you know, Warrior's big. San Francisco wants to own a piece of it, right?" The secretary of the attorney general of San Francisco was there, and you know, someone brought me to him, and he says, "Is there any way we can bring Warrior to San Francisco? Because this is San Francisco. What happened here?
Wow.
Right,
Wow.
How can we film some of it here? And he was offering tax breaks if I could talk to HBO. And you know, I tried. I just planted the seed. You know, I'm the lowest cog, right, in the wheel. You know, I can't get anything done. But you know, they know about it. They know San Francisco loves the show. You know,
Yeah.
and we
That's
love San
awesome.
Francisco, right? It's just that it's cheaper to film where we are. You know,
Yeah.
they're not going to be
Yeah.
able to get it there.
Well, you'd also
So
have
the
a lot of, you know, set alterations too to shoot live because it
yeah,
looks so different
right,
now.
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's what I said. You know, the set's going to be so different. Maybe if we filmed on Angel Island, you know, there was a moment because Angel Island didn't change much since then. Maybe if we did a scene there, but yeah. So you know, we you know, Warrior is I can't even say it's more than a dream, right? Come true
Yeah.
for someone like me because
Yeah.
politically it says what I want to say as a political. It aligns with my politics as an activist and as an artist and my hero. You know, I wouldn't be here when I was a kid seeing Bruce Lee on the screen, said, I can do that.
Well, speaking of Warrior, how did let's talk about how you came about the audition and the process, and I want to talk how you got the role, like how did you first hear about it, the whole process. Can you share that story?
Sure. I mean, when I first saw the audition headline or the production announcement, it was on deadline.com, which is, you know, an industry website for
Mhm.
actors.
Right.
And it said Justin Lin and Jonathan Tropper of Banshee with Shannon Lin to produce Warrior based on Bruce Lee's writings. I went, oh my gosh.
Ding 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 ding.
I went, this was like 2016 or something. I went like, I have to get on that show. No matter, it's, you know, it's like a pipe dream, right? Every actor wants to get on that show. Every Asian American actor. So I called my manager. I said, like, can we keep a lookout on this? Because when they start auditioning for actors, I will audition for any role they have. I don't care, you know. And you know, a year went by. I didn't really think about it. And then one day I got the call, and this says, "Hey, there's an audition in Warrior for you." Father June. Here's the breakdown. Father June, 70s was the age range. Shock of white hair, you know, milky eye from his years of fighting, you know, like the opium wars and all that. I was like, oh my God,
This
I'm
sounds
gonna
awesome.
you know, I'm gonna audition for that guy. You know, I didn't have any hair, right? So I'm like, but I'm gonna do it anyway, you know.
Right. Right.
So I'm like, you know, it's a big, you know, Father June, if you recall from the show, most of his dialogue is monologues.
Monologues.
He
Yeah.
doesn't really have a, you know, he talks a little bit, but he's got these big speeches, right?
Oh,
And
the
that's kind
bar
of
scene, when
yeah,
he beats
Marcy,
Assam.
oh.
Oh my
Oh
God.
God. That's
they're
so
kind of
good.
hard. They're kind of hard to audition for, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, when you audition with dialogue, you have somebody to bounce off of
Right.
in the energy. But when you're just there solo doing your monologue, it's just all what you can give us, right? It's kind of nerve wracking, you know? So anyway, I went, I better own this. I've got to own this. You know, as I started saying the monologues, it was the first monologue in episode 1 about, you know, bowing to him and the ducks, you know, and all the,
Right.
and I
Oh.
went like, did I just get off a boat? You know, all this
Oh
stuff.
God.
And I
You're
was like,
such a dick in that scene. It's awesome. It's so good.
It's really good.
Because I go from not really liking Father June to the end of you
To
beating the shit out of Assam in the
loving
bar
him so
to
much.
loving him. Because you're like, I'm like, oh my God, he's really trying to beat Assam to not join this gang, but he's really not. He's really is like initiating him.
it's tough
And
love.
by the end of it,
Yeah.
you drink to him. I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome. I'm
It's-
sorry. I'm
it's-
sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No,
to
no, no,
interrupt
no. It's tough love, right? It's tough love.
Yeah.
And I talked about that with Andrew Koji as we were rehearsing that scene. He was like, well, why do I take that beating, you know? And I was like, you're in a foreign land. This is your way in a brotherhood, you know, if you want to join our brotherhood and keep you safe,
Yeah.
you know, and it's, you know, we talked about that stuff, but so I went, I have to really own these monologues. I have to really know. And I started thinking, started researching Malcolm X and what all this means. And I went, actually, I know all this. This is what I would say. Anyway, because I know who Father June is because of my great great grandfather and the history of Chinese
All
in
your
America
experiences.
and all my experiences, my family history. I know who that guy is, you know. And so I went to the audition, but it just turns out that audition that morning, right? I was preparing my mind. I was going to meditate for an hour before it, and then my wife goes, "Oh yeah, so you're taking our son to his first day of high school orientation today, right?"
Oh no.
And I went, oh my God, that is on the calendar. And it was like his orientation was at 10 a.m. My audition's at 12 noon. And I went, oh my, okay. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get into his orientation. We get there and they're giving us all this information about where counselors are.
Right.
How
You're
do you
looking at
get
your
how do you get
watch.
your locker? I'm like, he can't understand all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta take this information down. It's running over, right? It's getting to 11:30. I gotta get to my audition, and we get out late. I put him in a cab. I send him home. I get into a cab. I go to the audition. I get there, and I'm like 5 minutes early. I'm like, oh my God, I got 5 minutes to meditate. As soon as I opened the door, they went, "Oh, Perry, hey, are you ready? Let's just go." And I went, "Oh my God!"
Oh,
I was like, "This is my moment, right?" Okay,
Yeah.
I go in there, stand. I'm kind of sweating from rushing there. I'm trying to dry myself off, and she goes, "Okay, should we just go?" I'm like, "Okay, go." Boom. I do the monologue. I think I did okay, And she stops the camera and she goes, "Stop what you're doing. They want someone really solid. You want to try it again?" And I went, holy shit. All that stress that was from my son's orientation was all showing up on my face and everything,
yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
probably breathing. I
Yeah.
was like, I thought I was doing nothing, right? So I said, okay, give me a second. I turned around and I went like, this is what I've been waiting for, for a year, this audition. I'm gonna fuck this up, And then Be Like Water just came into my brain. I was like, this is Bruce, man. I'm channeling Bruce. He just
Right.
answered me. He just said, "Be like water." I turned around. I said, okay, let's do it. Did the monologue. And she stopped and she goes, "Great. You ready for the next one?" I said, "Let's do it." And after the next one, she goes, "Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming in. We'll be in touch." They say that all the time. So you have no
Right.
idea what's going to happen.
You
They're
have
going to
no
look at
idea.
20 other auditions and stuff like that.
Right.
And then we went on,
Daniel
was
Day
something
Kim
like-
is the oh shit.
yeah, exactly. No. Okay. So, yeah.
Get
So
lost.
other people, it was an international. It
Yeah,
was an
yeah.
international
Yeah,
search,
yeah.
right? So it's, they saw everyone that you can imagine,
Wow.
And so something, well, there was a holiday like Memorial Day or something. So I knew that I wasn't going to hear from them over 2 days, over the weekend, and then another day. And it was kind of excruciating because it was, as an actor, you think you're not supposed to think about it after you do the audition. You show them what you got. It's out of your hands.
You move on.
You
Yeah.
move on because if you wait and you cross your fingers, it's just stress, and 9 times out of 10 or more, you're not going to get the role, right? So I waited. I didn't hear for 4 days, and I went, okay, it's done. I'm not going to get it. And then I'm driving back from our trip, and my phone rings in the car as I'm driving. I was like, oh, it's my agent, but I can't take this as I'm driving. And I'm getting on like, oh my God, I can't, so I drive another hour, I get home and I call my agent and he goes, "Warrior, let's talk."
Nice. Love it.
That's what he said?
Oh my
That's what he
God.
said?
It was on the message. It was on the
Oh.
message. I called checked my messages.
You're too
And
big.
I just screamed, man. I just screamed because it was like a dream, It's like I just
So
couldn't
cool.
believe like the steps that, like all the ups and downs and all
How
the,
how did that feel when you did your first of all, what was the first scene that you recorded that you were
Yeah,
filmed? What was the
it
first
was
scene?
that first scene when the
Oh, was
song
that
comes
scene?
in.
Okay.
That was the
So
very first scene.
what did that feel like to be in costume and to be on that set, which the sets are amazing too. They don't get enough props. That set is
Set
ridiculous.
and costume design.
Costumes ridiculous.
A toy's costumes.
The women's
yeah.
costumes are
a
amazing.
toy has like some of the best dresses I've ever seen on TV.
Yeah,
Like, the
amazing.
costume designer for your show
Yes.
is amazing.
Every single member of the creative team are top notch, and that's why they were assembled to do exactly that, their job. Andrew Lawson was the art director who designed the sets. He's awesome. He's totally amazing. He's spot on too. In the detail of everything.
It's fantastic. So, sorry, we we go on these like tangents, but
yeah, no, all good.
But how did that? I mean, did you just kick right into character, like when
Well,
they said action, like you just like, or was that the nerves? Like what was going on there?
all of that. So what happened was I had the eye, right? The scleral eye, the lens,
Oh,
the white
yeah.
eye. I had to get that fitted in New York, right? Before I went. And they were like, we might not have time. So can you visit this optometrist, get that special eye designed? And I went there and I got it. And it was really uncomfortable, right? You
can't CG this.
yeah. I know, right? So,
Yeah.
and acting is hard already, but sometimes when you have a distraction, it's even harder,
Mm.
And so we get to South Africa and we tried it, and it wasn't a good fit. They were like, "Oh yeah, there's something wrong with that. We have to make another one." So they made another one. I never had a chance to audition or try that eye out until the moment right before we shot, right?
Oh my
So
gosh.
so they were like, okay, right before we shoot, we pop this thing in, and it's like suddenly I can't see with one eye, right? Because it's blurry, and so my equilibrium thrown off. I couldn't really walk straight, so I had to have an assistant walk me to the set because it's a little like that, and then there's cables on the floor and everything.
Oh,
And so they say, okay, let's rehearse this thing, and I'm realized, oh man, I can't even say my lines because this thing is bothering my eyes. And then it was like, you good? Action. I'm like, whatever comes out of my mouth, yeah, I mean, will come.
why do
and
you
then-
look so weird? Because you're
yeah,
all
so
stop doing
luckily,
that.
luckily you have a few takes, right? And then, but everybody's on the time. It's like, because we have to shoot 5 more scenes today, right? Let's just get the scene right. And you kind of wonder, why does it have to work like that? Why can't we do the art under like really good conditions where we don't
Time
have
is
to,
money,
like,
Perry.
you know,
Come on.
exactly,
we gotta
right?
we gotta film these fight scenes, damn it.
Exactly.
Did you use? I've heard like Christian Bale had used how uncomfortable the Batsuit was as part of his repertoire for being Batman. Did the eye make you more pissed off while you were doing that scene? Because you were so good in that scene.
you
Like
were
when you
really
come out and
freaking
just say, did I just come off the boat or whatever? And I was just like, holy shit. Like I was, and as you're saying that scene, I'm like, I wonder if he used the irritability of the eye as part of how annoyed you were in that scene. Did you use that as motivation or no?
I did use an annoyance on the set that trigger, influenced some of the acting. I would say that it didn't come from the eye. It came from, I would say, kind of a disagreement, right? Sometimes I didn't agree with the director of how that scene should have went, and I felt like he was just kind of like, let's just do this. Come on, let's just try it. Let's just try it. It was like I was disagreeing with how he wanted me to play the scene. He goes, can you try it for me once? Just do the. So I did it really. I used the anger that I felt like, he's under. I had understood that he was under pressure to get it right, and he was pressuring me to do a certain thing that I didn't feel like it should have went that way, because I wanted Father June to be more of like Marlon Brando than Al Pacino. You know what I mean? Like, but so it ended up somewhere more like Al Pacino in the very beginning, like a little wild and angry, instead of really controlled and powerful, right? Reserved,
right.
because when you're the king, you don't act like the king. People treat you like the king,
exactly.
Right? And so that's what we trying to have a conversation, but he was like looking at this watch, So it's like, and people think that you have time to rehearse on film. Very often, time on TV and film, you don't have time to rehearse or touch base with someone. You just have to do it in the moment, and they adjust in the moment. So I use a lot of it. They really so when I let that take out, it was really angry, and it was really grounded in like this dude not respecting me, right? Assam not respecting me,
right?
And I played it more like Al Pacino, like being like a hothead, losing it, and he really liked it. He really, and I went, oh my god, I don't really want Father June to be that guy. I don't think Father June is this hothead that's going to lose it. He's in control. Because all right, let's try another take. I think you got it. Let's try another take. So the other take is the one that ended up finally in the show.
Nice.
But my original version would have been a little even cooler, right? Would have been cooler.
Right.
But like we just never had time to find that, and this is part of what you have to wrestle through. But I'm not saying anything bad about the director. It's just all what we want and see and how you can communicate in the moment. And in that moment, it was like, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on everybody to act, and then you have to pull it all in when they say action, and make those choices. So I did use the annoyance.
The scene works great because you're right. Remembering the scene, it's a little bit of both. You're setting Assam in his place. You're letting him know, because he's new, like, I'm the guy. Don't walk around like you're the guy, even though one-on-one you could probably kick my ass, but I'm still the guy.
Right.
And that's what I loved about that. That's why I loved hating him in that scene, hating your character in that scene. And this is how I know you're a great actor, because you're such a dick in that scene, but you're not in real life.
and I have to give props to the director, because he knew that scene needed someone like that, right? It didn't need somebody that was cool and powerful. It needed somebody who was kind of menacing, right? In that moment of the first episode. And then over the next 10 episodes, I get to pull it back and peel away the layers. and become the more like
Like an
by,
onion?
se- by se-
Like an onion?
like an onion. And by season 2, I can become the more empathetic,
Oh
compassionate
God.
father, right? At the end,
Yeah.
it's like, wow, this guy's a father, you know?
Yeah, I mean, seeing him from episode 1 till when you leave for young June to take over is such a 180 almost of how peaceful you are at the end of that. Like he was the king of the empire in Chinatown, and he basically just walks away from it all and just says, "You know what? I'm going to start over somewhere else. It's your turn now." It I would have never guessed that from the first time I saw you in
No,
that scene
not
with
at all.
Assam.
Not
I
at
would
all.
have thought I thought that it was going to be like this, like stereotypical father-son relationship that you always get, where the father doesn't want to let go of his power and does everything to undermine his son, but he
That's a
doesn't.
that's a great thing about Jonathan Tropper and the other writers is they understand and they kind of dangle that carrot, right? What do you think it's going to be? But then they write for the writers, and what's happening? They watch us and they go, "Oh, I see that this relationship can go that way," and they follow us, right? And I was telling Jonathan, like I was like how happy I was that he was writing like our relationship, father and playing up the father and son relationship, because we've never seen that. And then he wrote really dramatic stuff that was family based, right? About his mother. I started talking about his mother,
Right.
and how his mother didn't, drop him off when he was this crying baby, but I didn't see that. I saw a fighter,
Mm.
and so it was like, he built up this really dynamic character that can care, right, for his son.
It's also interesting that, again, they understand the cultural relationship too,
They do.
because a lot, like your parents, my parents, and most Asian parents, Chinese parents, are not going to praise their kid. Like, you got a 92, why didn't you get a 100?
100%.
Like,
You can
how
do
come?
better.
Right? How come you didn't finish first? If you finished first, how come you didn't finish better first than last time? Type of ordeal. And that's basically what happens here, where Father June is basically beating down young June because he realizes when he takes over, there's no holding your hand. You're going to have to make
Exactly.
choices that are so freaking tough. And if I don't give you thick skin now, you're never going to get it. But you don't understand that. It's kind of like the Mr. Miyagi doing the wax on, wax off thing. Like, why the hell am I
Yeah.
washing this car? Even
Exactly.
though growing up watching kung fu movies, you knew exactly why he was waxing that car, right?
There's some philosophy in that word.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's the other thing too. Like, again, I am blown away by the fact that there's so many non-Asian writers in this show, and it worked. Even the costume designers aren't even Asian. Like, I was so blown away by how authentic this show felt in relationships, in culture, in dialogue, in relationships, that I was completely shocked that it wasn't 90% Chinese or Asian writers. Like, that's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, they care, like Justin Lin, Shannon Lee, Jonathan Tropper, they care about doing good art and authenticity, right? So they're not working for a big machine that has that has to put a stamp on it, like Mulan, right? You had to have the Disney stamp on that movie, so they had to fit into there.
Right.
Warrior didn't have those constraints or restraints, so they were able to go with gut feeling, authenticity, work their artistry, and choose and find the creative team that they trusted and liked. So
Right.
we're extremely lucky, and to have, like I say, everybody on board is so top notch. I mean, even when I'm on set, I like to go. I mean, I'm studying my fellow cast members because I'm going, oh my God, they're so good, because off camera, they're someone else completely.
Right.
We go
Like
have
you are.
drinks afterwards. We go drink. We go do all hiking and afterwards, and everybody's totally different from the character.
Right.
Then so I go watch them shoot, and I'm like, oh my God, he's so good.
Right.
Because I know who he is or she
Right.
is off camera.
Right.
That's cool.
I mean,
I think
Yeah.
I think if Warrior ever brings Chi into the show, then you've
Honor
gotten the
and
wrong
chi.
you've gotten
got
the
it
wrong writers, because that is the typical
yeah.
thing that happens when you get a white writer or non-Asian writer
Or
writing
wire
for
fu
Asian.
or
Yeah, like
Yeah.
for some reason Chi is the the word that they
Yeah,
have for
right,
years.
right,
Um,
right. Well,
so
I think Kenneth Lin being in the writers' room was a huge thing. He left, after season two because now he's got a big contract somewhere else. But we brought in, we're having an Asian female writer for season three, and a white woman writer and a black woman writer on
are
the
you
team.
back for season 3? Or you can't say?
Do
Well,
you
you know
want to
what?
put
You
a
don't have to
spoiler?
answer that.
Yeah.
You don't have to say it, but the fact that you know that
Check his
there's
IMDb.
writers. Well, I don't know. The internet lied about his age, so I'm not going
That's
to believe
true.
that.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
but the fact that you know the writers, I think I have an idea whether or not you're going to be in season 3, and I'm just going to say that I'm going to be happy that you're.
I think you'll be.
Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I think you'll be very happy. I mean, I think from what I've been told, whoops, there you go.
Shit.
Well, I
What
mean,
you've been told, the show's going to be awesome.
yeah, from the writer's mouth, they said season three is as different to season two as season two is to one.
Oh,
It's gonna
God.
go somewhere else.
I'm literally getting
And-
goosebumps. I cannot wait for the show.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, everybody was, you can't imagine the fan base out there. I mean, most of the fan base are not Asian.
Yeah.
They just love good shows, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you should see the people that came out and the DMs I get about, just so happy with this incredible show for
Yeah.
whatever reasons, whether it's martial arts, the acting, the writing, the historical aspects of it, what it represents, the storytelling, all of it is top notch, right? And that's why HBO brought it back. Really?
I was so shocked. Like literally, it was always like, let's bring back this white show. It's gonna happen. And Warrior was such a little niche, like because like it was on Cinemax also.
Yeah,
And
that's
and
where it
I
started,
didn't
yeah.
have Cinemax.
Mhm.
I knew about the
Mhm.
show. I know I promoted the show when I first heard about it and when it came out, but I didn't have Cinemax.
And
And
that's why they knew it was going to be so big, because it made a huge splash with no advertising.
yes,
You know,
Yeah.
At
on
all,
HBO
right?
Max.
it just dropped
Yeah.
on HBO Max. I'm like, I'm finally gonna watch it.
right?
And I think I texted you. I'm like, holy shit, dude, you got to watch the show.
Within 5 minutes, he texted
Yeah.
me. He's like, "Stop what you're doing and start watching the show." I'm like,
Because
"All right."
we always talk about, that's what our podcast is about.
You know, when I
And I'm sorry,
when
go
I
ahead.
did the first like a Comic-Con, and my booth was next to some of the original actors from the movie Warriors.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Warriors from
Yeah.
the 80s.
And so yes, from the
Oh
80s.
god, that's a little
It was one of
confusing.
my favorite movies, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So one of those guys looked at me and went, "Oh my, Warrior?" I was like, "Yeah." And I'm a big fan of yours. I'm sorry, like I couldn't remember, but he was the character, the black guy with that sort of
With yeah.
the headband and
Headband.
the sort of very kind of Arab look.
Yeah.
He was like, when I saw Warrior on TV, I was calling all my friends, "You got to watch the show," and he goes, "Your son, Young June. Oh my God, your son, Young June," And I was like, I mean, that was an incredible circle, because I grew up I loved Warrior, and I was like, one day I'm going to be in New York City and I'm going to ride those trains just like those gangs,
That's awesome.
And then for
Yeah.
him to say that he was a fan of Warrior, I was like, oh my God.
Everything came
wow,
full circle.
I know.
That's
That
so
was
crazy.
amazing.
I'm so like it's just one of those shows, and the history of the show and the people involved in the show in front of the camera, especially like Assam and Young June, Jason Tobin and Andrew Koji. They're just so good. And one of my new favorite characters from season 2, Han.
Hung.
The
Yeah.
Hung.
Oh,
Oh my
man.
God, I love that guy.
Oh, I love that guy. The
I love that
boots.
Chen Tang.
Yeah. He
Chen,
is,
yeah.
everybody
Favorite.
is so good in the show.
Yeah.
It's like the women. Atoy is like
Mhm.
my other favorite character too.
Yeah.
She is so amazing.
I mean, when I saw that Dustin Nguyen was in the show, and
Oh,
played
God, yeah.
Sing,
Yeah,
and
he's
like,
great.
oh man, he was
That's
like a
old
hero.
school.
He
Yeah,
was a
old
hero
school.
of mine,
Yeah,
Even before Daniel Day Kim, right? 21 Jump Street. I mean, you
Right.
saw him, and it was like,
Yep.
but it was so rare,
That's so cool.
And then to be hanging out with Dustin on the set, and it's like, wow, this really is a dream come true.
well, I mean, you've got some really OG like Asian people in front of the like Hoon Lee.
no,
like,
Hoon, yeah.
I mean, talk about a connection to Brandon, right?
Oh,
Oh,
right.
right.
With Rapid, he was in. I think he was in Rapid Fire, right?
Rapid Fire, I think.
was he? I
Maybe.
didn't know that. I don't know if
think he
Hoon
was
was.
I think he might have been the the one guy who goes against Zima because he was the main character in that show.
I
I'm
don't
sorry, in that
know.
movie.
I don't.
Was that,
I don't know. I can't recall if it is or not. Yeah.
wait, was it
You're
Hulu?
lying.
Did I make it up
don't
again?
know. Yeah.
Did I lie again?
You're putting together a movie you want to see.
I'm just throwing Asian names out there.
Yeah.
The guy who plays Long Z, Henry Yuk,
Yeah.
he was in The Last Dragon. There was
Yeah.
a scene in The Last Dragon with 3 Asian guys, and like he's always recognized for being in that scene. So I've known Henry for like 30 years in New York City from seeing theater things together and having worked with the same theater companies, but we never worked together
Right.
until we got cast in Warrior. So it's great to have that
That's so cool.
opposition play that scene with him, Father June and Long Z, you know,
Oh,
with
God.
an old friend of mine from New York. So it was just truly an amazing moment. And if I can give a plug right now, I don't know if your podcast will be out.
No, please.
But,
This is a good time to do it.
This will actually drop tomorrow.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
so I'm Henry and I are in an episode of The Equalizer, Queen Latifah's Equalizer,
Oh,
and that's
Ah.
March 6th. That's next Sunday. It's going to
yeah,
air.
that's excellent.
And yeah, so it's the 2 of us from Warrior, and we have a scene together in you know, 100. It's like 150 years later in New York City, you know. And so I think you would love it.
You're immortal.
It's a scene about anti-Asian. It's a movie about it's an episode about anti-Asian violence, and Queen Latifah and The Equalizer. That episode really steps up, you know, and I think it's doing what Hollywood should do amidst this wave of violence against Asian Americans. Is they're making art and telling the story, and they're pointing at the problem and actually offering a solution on what we can do about anti-Asian violence. You know, so it's a really great episode, and I hope that it gets, you know, called out for that.
Yeah.
As something that Hollywood should do. They should write stories like this.
What's I know growing up, now you were in Oakland, so you had way more Black friends early on than I did.
Mhm.
Did your Black friends, like my dad said, Black people loved Bruce Lee because not only did he fight against the system, but he also beat the shit out of Chuck Norris, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I saw the culture change when Bruce Lee was hit the scene. I saw the culture change because I was a kid. Chinatown was right on the border of West Oakland, which was one of the most impoverished Black neighborhoods of Oakland. So we had Chinatown, which was impoverished, next to West Oakland, and right down the middle was Broadway, right? So Broadway was that border where if you ventured off, you can get your ass kicked, get mugged, and you know, it was just a dangerous street, right? You had to really watch out. But it was also a really exciting street, right? So we were kids. I'm maybe like 6 or 7 years old. We'd go as gangs, you know, from Oakland, walking down Broadway to the 99-cent stores, to those 99-cent movie theaters that are grindhouse theaters that show these kung fu movies and blaxploitation films back to back, right? So we can watch 18 Bronze Men with Blackula and you know, like back to back, you know,
Right.
and Foxy Brown, right? Those movies were like, and as long as we got in the theater, we were safe, you know. Right when Bruce Lee hit, all that changed because suddenly Asian kids were cool. We were no longer like picked on. You know, we'd go to see Return of the Dragon. I mean, there was a line around the block, and as we walked down the line, Black and brown people would be high-fiving us because they were like, suddenly we were cool, you know? And you know, and you
The
realize
white people
why.
are watching Star Wars.
Yeah, right. And we're watching
There's
Enter
no
the
Asians in
Dragon.
space.
No, you have Jim Kelly, right?
Mm.
He put Black people in his movies, right? And
Yeah.
that scene when Jim Kelly comes out of Enter the Dragon and these 2
Oh,
white cops pull
so
him over
badass.
and search him and pulls out his plane tickets right before he gets on that boat to Hong Kong for the tournament, pulls out his ticket, and the white cop goes, "Oh, this jig ain't going nowhere." As soon as that happened, Jim Kelly kicks them, right? Hits them, kicks their ass, gets in their car, and takes off. You should have heard the audience explode every time.
Oh my
every
God.
time, because you know, Black people, they know about police violence, right?
Oh.
And
Yeah.
why do you think they put that scene in the movie? You know,
Well,
right?
Bruce,
So,
Bruce. I
Bruce
mean,
Lee, yeah, and Jabbar.
I mean, if you know
after
anything
that.
about Bruce growing up in America, like he experienced all that stuff.
Mhm, mhm,
And-
exactly.
But
And he
he didn't,
saw.
and he was so welcoming to everybody. And that's basically what got him in trouble with the old school Chinese people or kung fu masters. But like he had white people, he had black people, he had Mexican people all in his class. Anybody who wanted to learn, because he didn't believe education or that type of stuff should have been basically gate kept.
Bruce experienced this, civil rights marches. He saw what should happen with solidarity, right? That he said we need to get together as people of all colors to fight the bigger enemy, right? So he experienced that, and he saw that what he had to do was use his artistic voice to bring people together.
Yeah, I mean,
John Saxon, right? Jim Kelly in Enter the Dragon. It's like that they can fight, the enemy.
now I have this love, not hate, but love. I'll just use love hate, but it's not the right term with Bruce Lee. I love Bruce Lee, but I hate the fact that it's been how long since he's died and he's still talked about today. 50% because he's a legend, but the other 50% because Hollywood hasn't done anything since then, really. Like we had Jackie Chan, but he was imported from China. His shit in America does not compare to like Police Story.
No, God, no.
Police Story to me is still one of my favorite action movies of all time.
Right.
But like then you watch like Shanghai Noon, and you're like, that's not Jackie Chan. That's like Jackie Chan watered down.
Yeah,
right, exactly, right. And so even at Jackie Chan's height, he still never reached Bruce Lee status, and we still don't have, as Asian Americans, we have Asian Americans that are popular, but not to Bruce Lee status.
No,
you know what I mean.
I think we're trying to get there, and we made a great leap with Shang-Chi.
Right.
But Bruce Lee is one individual with a dream, with a drive, right? With an intention that's just like, and that's what it takes, right? His original authentic voice and drive and artistry to tell his story, and you can't water that down, right? And Bruce didn't water it down. Like Shannon was telling me a story about when they started filming Enter the Dragon. The writers were like, we want to change the scene and we want to change the script, and he was like, no, I have to. They didn't want him to use his philosophy, the pointing to the moon.
Oh, right.
Like he goes, they didn't want him to say any of that stuff, and Bruce was like, if I don't say that, I'm not in the film. So there was a stalemate. They started shooting the film without him, and he just stayed in the hotel. And finally, they kowtowed and said, okay, you can shoot that.
That's
scene,
a really memorable scene too.
Yeah, right.
Huge. Yeah,
and that's what Bruce said. This martial arts is about philosophy. It's not just about the fists, right? It's about your brain
and punching, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So if I can't make the movie I want to make, the person you hired, I'm not going to make this movie.
What he actually filmed for Game of Death is still one of my most favorite things, because he literally did a live action video game without even knowing he did a live action video game.
Right. The levels,
every single level, and learning a new technique, or not learning a new technique, but using a new technique.
Right.
Was
fight the person
so ahead of his time. I've seen kind of movies that kind of do, like John Wick actually kind of does some of that.
Yeah.
Where he changes styles, but not to the effect of like that. And
I think that does come from other martial arts films though that preceded it. Like the Shaolin movies, you have to go through levels, right?
Levels,
right. Level of learning,
different chambers where you learn different skills, right? Gordon Liu had that.
But I'd never seen it in an American, like
American
movie.
Kill Bill
produced it.
Yeah.
Kill Bill, I think, did it.
Well, but he took it directly from Bruce Lee. I mean, she's dressed in that yellow suit.
Yeah.
So, right. All right, Perry, man, we've spent so much time. It doesn't even feel like we've spent a lot of time. I could talk to you all day, but we want to be respectful of your time. So we're going to move into what we call actually, before we move into the final segment, do you have anything else to plug besides The Equalizer? Do you want to plug anything else other than the fact that you might not be in Warrior?
I just shot a great, beautiful, beautiful family story with Duo Moa, who was in the live action Mulan, that played the Porky character, the heavier set comic relief.
Yeah,
he's Hmong. He's a Hmong American actor, and his first film was in Clint Eastwood's Gran Torino.
Oh, okay.
It's about Hmong gang violence and how Clint Eastwood was the neighbor who sacrifices,
Right,
life
right.
so that his neighbor could not get, you know, I guess receive the violence from the Hmong gangs. Anyway, he was in that film, and he's a prolific Hmong actor, and he wrote a film based, it's kind of autobiographical called The Harvest,
Right.
and we just shot that, and I heard he just submitted it to Sundance. So look for The Harvest by Duan Hua. It's an
Cool.
incredibly beautiful film about family in America.
Okay. The
Nice.
Harvest. And
Right.
that's coming out this year or
I
next
believe
year?
this year. I hope Sundance accepts it. If not, it'll be in the Asian American film. It'll be in film festivals. Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be around.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. So what we do is we do this thing, we call it the big finish. And everybody that we've ever had on that we interview like this, their first time on is we always ask them 3 questions. They're all the same. So BJ,
So
why don't you go
the
first with the first
so the
question?
first question is, Perry, what is your all-time favorite character? It could be from any genre.
Well, I'd have to say Bruce Lee as any one of his characters in any of his films.
Okay.
So what kind of gift would you give Bruce Lee? That's a follow-up question.
I would give him a flute that I made personally.
You know,
Oh.
I think I knew you were going to say that. I think I just knew you were going to say that. As the first time I could predict an answer, I'm like, I bet he says flute.
not punch in the face.
Yeah.
So you can kill me. Yeah.
Okay, so next question is, what are you watching on TV now? It could be something that you're binging or you have to watch when it comes out. What's your favorite thing to watch as
What's
far as
your
TV shows
go-to?
right now?
Oh, we just finished We Are All Dead, Korean zombie high school movie
Oh, on Netflix, yeah.
with my son Jet, and we loved it.
Man,
And you're
Koreans can act.
well,
Korean
Vic's a
actors.
big pussy. He doesn't like zombie horror shit.
I'm not, unless we're reviewing it for the show.
Yeah.
I rarely watch anything horror, but that is actually in my queue because I'm starting to really enjoy the Korean cinema, like
Mhm.
and
Squid
how they
Game and some other
and
stuff.
how they're very socially aware in their films and
Right.
shows.
Brilliant. I mean, I would say that it's a zombie movie, but most of it is teen drama about like,
Mm.
oh, do you like me? I like you now. Can we be boyfriend and girlfriends? Because it's high school, so it's really
Right.
brilliant how they navigate that kind of script with
That's
these
interesting.
zombies around them. It's really
Right.
pretty great. It's really
And
pretty
I
I'll
gotta
have to
say,
check it out.
Asian zombies and ghosts in Asian
Creepy.
cinema are the freaking scariest. I cannot watch any
Ghost babies.
vampire like Chinese or Asian horror stuff is so scary to me. Just how they do it. I don't understand. It's just something about the way they do it.
Those Chinese ghost stories I saw when I was a kid. Oh my God, they
God.
were way scarier than any Western.
Yeah,
horror
give me
movies.
The
Yeah.
Exorcist any day. I will. The way that they do their makeup, the way that they act, and I mean, I've seen like, I forget the name of it, but I saw like a horror comedy, a Chinese film that was horror comedy, and even then, the makeup for the Chinese ghosts and zombies scare the crap out of me. All right, so here's a question, because it's basically an ensemble cast. So my follow-up question is, the group of people in that show that are in the high school, what kind of transportation do you think they would use? Would it be KITT, Airwolf, or Street Hawk?
Oh shoot! Okay, you're
So
wouldn't be Street Hawk.
KITT was Street Hawk was like a
Motorcycle.
a
Was a
very
motorcycle.
very short-lived TV show with a fast motorcycle, and then
Right.
Airwolf was like the helicopter
Well,
show.
Street Hawk could work because in The Walking Dead, he's got a
Oh.
motorcycle.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay.
And then
okay.
KITT, was the
But
top
based on the
car.
based on the
Yeah.
show,
Right.
though, based on that show, which one of those three do you think?
I guess it would be Airhawk.
Or
You mean Airwolf?
Airwolf,
Airwolf,
the
sorry,
helicopter,
Airwolf.
the helicopter,
Helicopter?
because they could fly away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
and blow stuff up. That makes total
Right.
sense.
And they actually used helicopters a lot in that series.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
they do. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll have
Imagine
to watch.
Airwolf is in it.
Airwolf.
Yeah, that was a short-lived show. We need to change these questions because
No way, man. This is so nerdy.
That was
Kid
pretty
Arrow-
nerdy.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was. That's old school, right?
I knew Kit though. I knew Kit.
Yeah,
Right.
You know, but I
because
didn't
that
know
was
the
on
other
for a
two.
while. But
Yeah.
Street Hawk and
Street Hawk was
Airwolf,
Street Hawk and Airwolf came about because of Knight Rider. Like
That's
Oh,
like
true.
all right, well,
Okay.
what other vehicle can we make souped up? And if you
and they
go
never
back
did
and
a
watch
boat
you
because
go-
the other two didn't work. They're like, we're not going to do a talking
if you go
boat.
back and watch Street Hawk, right? I mean, the motorcycle travels at a ridiculous
400 miles
like
an hour.
300 miles an hour, and basically all they do, because it's a TV show, they just
They
fast
just-
forward the
Yeah.
you know,
Right,
they speed-
right.
But imagine a motorcycle traveling at 300 miles an hour. It's no way it's making a 90-degree turn. It would just crash and burn. But as a kid growing up watching that,
You're like,
I
this
was like, that is
badass.
so cool. But physics and physical wise, there's no way you can make a turn at 300 miles per hour on a motorcycle. It wasn't even like it wasn't even a crotch rocket. They actually revamped a actual dirt bike, like an actual BMX,
Yeah.
not a BMX, like an actual cross dirt bike.
Try to Google it when you get a chance. It's
Okay.
it's
It
ridiculous.
sounds insane.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
is,
But
it is.
Airwolf was a cool show, but the guy ended up being like a drug addict or whatever. So or an alcoholic or something like that. So they had to cancel the show. But it was really good. Like he was a pilot for this like helicopter, this like crazy technological, helicopter.
That was faster than like F-16s.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Someone's like, I got an idea about a boat. They're like, no, no, we're done with that.
Yeah, we can't have
No,
too many boat busts.
Talking boats.
What happens when you have to go on land? Oh, crap. So okay, last question. What are your favorite 3 films of all time?
Oh my God.
Probably
This
changes.
is the one that usually stumps them, because for us, it's always usually the mood that we're in. My top 3 always change. So
Right.
Yeah, every
right.
year.
it's usually at the moment. What do you think your top 3 all time could be?
Okay, so one of them is Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood. Another one just because it's the nostalgia. They're not, when you look back at it, they're not great films, right? But they have such a strong impact. And I would say Enter the Dragon. And then, wow, what's the third one? These are tough ones.
It's
are
all
tough
Legally
ones.
Blonde. Like it's always like 2 obscure ones, and then one like everybody's seen like a million
Yeah.
times.
I would have to say one film that left a strong impact on me recently is Minari.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah. So
I have to ask you a question about Minari because we really loved the film and it was beautifully acted, like ridiculously acted. But is there a job where you have to look at chickens all day long? Like know if they're male or female and then toss them? I mean, is that a real thing?
I don't really know, but according to them, you have to. It's like sexting or something. You have to see the sex or something if it's going to hatch or not. Yeah, like
That's great.
You got to see what the sex. You can tell what the egg is if it's going to hatch or not. That's what they're doing or somthing, right?
But I thought
wait.
he said something about
they were
taste
checking.
different.
No,
The
they
males
were checking like female, male, and they discard the males.
because they said the
yeah,
male nuggets taste different.
It's
Like I don't
chickens,
remember
right.
what it was. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but
Well,
okay.
they're not going to be able to breed them, right? The
Right,
males.
that-
So
that-
they're
right,
separating. That's
That
what
makes
they're doing.
sense. They
It's like
separate
when you go crabbing, you can eat them. You can take the males, but you throw the females back in.
Mm.
All right. So again, Perry, thank you. So remember, I asked you about your favorite nerd thing, and you had you replied to, and I told you it would make sense at the end. So what we also do after the big finish is we also kind of give a gift. And I don't know if you've noticed, but our logo has stick figures, and that's mainly because neither of us can draw. So that's our shtick. So every guest on our show also gets a stick figure of their own. So I'm going to send this to you later on because we're going to need a selfie. But
Oh wow!
this is your stick
That
figure.
is
So
awesome.
describe to our listeners what you're.
Yeah,
what
we're
you're
gonna
looking at there.
drop the video for, but
Yeah,
you know, but there's also a podcast that
This
you're
is
gonna.
it's a beautifully rendered you know, I guess anime, or I don't want to say cartoon, but
It's it's
representation, right?
it's like stick figure plus,
Stick
basically.
figure plus of Father June holding a shakuhachi with my guitar on the back, which is the Fender Telecaster Thin Line,
Yep.
very special guitar, and it looks like me. It's great. It's awesome. I mean, what a gift! Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, we have to internet stalk people, and I saw
It's-
on your Instagram that you love this, that you traded this guitar for this guitar,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh shit, I got to put that in there somehow.
Yeah, you didn't draw
So-
that.
No.
You
Definitely
didn't
not.
draw that. These are getting more intricate as we go along.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
is-
I actually had to look up, because I'm terrible at drawing feet. Like, so like I had to actually look up like what people wore in 1890s.
Oh, because that's Father June's outfit.
Right.
yeah.
But it's these shoes at the bottom that I couldn't believe that you guys wore. And I only know that you guys wore that because there was a scene where Assam and young June are talking, and I see Assam's shoes. And I'm like, holy shit, they actually wore these. So
That's awesome.
How does he
had to
kick in
get,
that?
I don't know. But they're like mid, almost high tops, and they're buttoned. There's no laces on them.
Yeah.
Right,
I
right.
like that he's
So,
got the chain. Father June's got his chain there.
I
Yeah,
got my
it's-
watch chain right
Yeah,
there.
that's really cool. That's
Yeah,
That is
dope.
awesome. That's a
I got
great
a lot of
yeah.
detail. Perry, thank you so much for spending the
Thank
time
you
with
so
us.
much.
So much love, and so I good luck in things that I can't mention that you're in. Like, just know that
Keep going.
you have two fans that absolutely love this ground. It really truly is a groundbreaking show for me. It
Thank
really
you.
is. And it's not just Asian people that like it. Anybody who has ever seen the show, I have never heard one bad thing about it. The only bad thing is that it was over.
Yeah. When's the next one?
Because we
Exactly.
actually reviewed the show
Whoa.
and got our fans, our followers and fans, to watch the show and got more fans. So
That's
then we
awesome.
put out, if you go back to our Facebook page, I actually left up on our banner about saving Warrior forever because I couldn't not try. I signed every
Wow.
petition possible, and
Right.
our fans were so disappointed to learn that there was no season 3 when we reviewed the show. And
Yeah, they got all mad. They're like, "Where's the rest of it?"
and then when Shannon broke that video,
Mm.
I texted BJ about it. I was like,
yeah, we lost
"Dude!"
it. We lost it. Yeah, it was awesome.
I know I had nothing to do
So-
with it, but I was like, we did it. It's coming back.
We did it.
We did. I mean, no, you did have something to do with it. It's a collective effort, right? It went into the collective consciousness of everybody who put that energy out there, like Paulo Coelho said, right? Paulo Coelho, you know, just put it out there in the universe will answer, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what you guys did, and that's
So
what we all
happy.
did, and it's a special show that we
It
all
was such a
love.
great video. It was such a great reveal video too.
Oh, it was great. That was really good.
I just saw it drop and I'm like, huh, what's this about?
Huh,
Because
what's
I
this?
follow Shannon on social media. I'm like, what's this about? And then it goes on and it just says we're back. I'm like, wait a minute. Those guys are from Warrior.
Oh yeah! Oh my god!
It was really good.
It was so great. It was so great. I'm
Like,
so
did
happy.
Bruce Lee write something else?
I'm so happy. Like again, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. It's one of my favorite shows of all time.
And you're
And
absolutely
I'm
amazing.
so happy, and I cannot wait for the future of this show. Like I just can't wait. And I know you guys are going to get new fans when season 3 comes out too. There's going to be other people that haven't watched the first season because the show was canceled. But once you guys drop season 3,
Right.
you
And it's
guys are going to get
HBO.
and you guys are going to
Yeah,
get
HBO
so many
Max
more
is
fans. You guys are going to get so many more fans.
They'll probably have an advertising budget, which you know, like
Which
we
will
didn't
help.
for
Yeah.
which we did not for Cinemax. So yeah, I mean, once it went on HBO, I started getting recognized on the streets, which was like, oh wow, you know, immediately the audience just blew up.
That
you
was
know,
one of the things I was disappointed for when I heard that the show got greenlit, that it was going to go on Cinemax. and that it wasn't like the big, I know
Mhm.
HBO owns Cinemax, but if I knew if it wasn't HBO, it would have stood a chance. And so when I heard
Right,
it got canceled, I was like, that's because you put it on Cinemax. And then I got even more mad when I actually watched the show, because I was like, how could you cancel this?
Well, they did. I mean, I remember watching Banshee and how much I loved that show, and that had a beginning, middle, and an end.
Oh wait, you guys were on Showtime, not Cinemax.
No, they were Cinemax. They
No, we were Cinemax.
Okay.
But see, Banshee got a beginning, middle, and an end. Like it had a finality to it,
Mhm.
and it's such an awesome ride. So when I heard they were doing Warrior, I was like, oh, that's perfect, because I like that genre. And I don't think HBO Max was doing anything like that. So once the show got canceled, they kind of moved over to HBO, where HBO is kind of more popular. It blew up. Everyone kept telling, you've watched this Warrior show? I'm like, yeah, I've been telling you to watch it forever. Like, it's fucking awesome. And then the disappointment of like, oh, there's no more.
Yeah.
So
just watch the first 2 seasons again.
Yeah. And so I texted, everybody I knew. I'm like, it's coming back. And so everyone's like super excited.
Yeah.
Well,
our fans are super excited.
You might have missed that sort of news, but Warrior did have season 3 planned, and we were going to shoot it, but
the pandemic, right?
But it was sold. No, HBO was sold to Warner Media.
Warner Media, right?
That's right.
And then AT&T, which AT&T owned, I think. So because of this merger, they had to let go of Cinemax.
Right. There was a lot of
right.
All the new things that were in the pipe for Cinemax were canceled.
Exactly. So it was devastating to the cast and the crew and everybody, because it was like, now we're not coming back, but we did have a season 3 greenlit that we were planning to come back. So I mean, but the fans really asked for it and said, let's do this. You guys need to bring it back.
I'm telling you right now, when season 3 drops, you're gonna get so many more DMs. I'm telling you. You're gonna get so many more DMs, because literally everybody in the show is amazing. Everybody. I mean, I hated
everybody.
That mayor was such an asshole.
Oh, he was, but he's so good too.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's how you know you're good, when you hate somebody, when you have such an emotional attachment, whether it's good or bad. That's how you know somebody's doing a really good job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and your character is just, man. I love you guys. You guys are so great. I love that show.
Thank you
Perry,
so much.
Thank you so much, Perry.
Thanks, BJ.
All right, you take care. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
All right. Talk again some other time.
Yeah,
absolutely. Take care.
Let's just sign off really quickly.
All right. Well, that was episode 368 of Chew on This, a Nerds United podcast. I'm BJ,
Vic,
and
Father June, also known as Perry Young.
signing up. Until next time, folks. Chew on that.
Later.